Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to, I think this is week 46. Yeah, week 46 of 2021. Wow, I say it every week, but I can't believe it. And there's a lot of changes coming in my life in the next couple of weeks, so I'm very excited. I'm going to try to get a couple of videos pre-filmed, but I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. So my sweet sister is having her third child next week, actually. I won't be gone next week, but the week of Thanksgiving. I think I've said this in a couple things. Like, I was already gonna take time off because I finally am at a job where I can have more vacation, and also Go Tell the Bees That I'm Gone comes out, so I wanted to have time off to read it. And I'm also going to be taking care of my sister's older kids and helping her out. So I will probably have one of these wrap-ups will probably be a little bit late, although sometimes I can find a place to film there, so we'll just see. We'll just see what happens. I will be vlogging while I'm there because I'll be reading bees. But anyway, today I have my Smut Squad shirt on. I got this off of Etsy. I love just looking up random like book things on Etsy and finding romance stuff to do. But anyway, you are here for my weekly wrap up. This week, I'll be honest with you, is good. It's pretty rough compared to previous weeks because I had a bit of a book slump, and I know a book slump for me is still reading at least a book a day. So I have 10 books to talk about. But y'all know the last couple weeks, there's been about 20 books on them. Sorry, I have my breakfast coffee here. And if you watch the beginning of my Outlander Unpopular Opinions video, which if you don't care about Outlander, you can still watch the first 10 minutes. And I explain kind of what happened to me last weekend. Well, not like happened to me. But I was just in a bit of a book slump because of some assholes on the internet. And I just wasn't expecting that because as a booktuber who's been around for a little while, not that I know, but I have been around a while. And I always tell people just to ignore it. And I had the first experience where it was just really, really hard for me to ignore what was said to me because it felt like a very personal attack. And that's hard. So I now understand how people who are much bigger than me, imagine, multiplying just the couple of bad reactions I had by hundreds of thousands of viewers. And then even if there's still only 0.1% of the population that does that to you, it's a bigger amount, So anyway, we're not going to give those people any more brain space. Like I said, you can go watch that if you want to. But let's go over the 10 books that I read this week because I still read some really great ones. And maybe I'll get you out of here in under an hour, which has been what the past videos are like. That would make editing it much easier for me. So the first book that I finished was Surviving Raine by Shay Savage. There was kind of 3 reasons why I was reading this one. Number one, I had heard about it way back when I read Transcendence, as you do as a book lover. When you love one book by an author, you look up everything else. So I had looked up and I had seen this one. Then when I was reading survival books a couple weeks back, this book came up on that list and I purchased it. And then when I was going through my book recommendation form, which I always love to remind you that, guys, the link for that is in my link tree down below where you can recommend a book to me. That's where I get most of my recommendations from you guys. And every month I try to pick about 10 books that are specifically recommended to you. And a lot of times there's crossover because people are always recommending books. And I saw Surviving Raine on that list as well. So I had 3 reasons to read this one. So this book is about a shipwreck, basically. It is modern times. And we have our hero who is a very grouchy, kind of broken man. He's an alcoholic. He's a smoker. He is the captain of this ship. He has a pretty rough past, a past that we find out about through the book. This is something that Shay Savage does fairly often, is most of her books are from heroes POV, which is kind of cool because it's not something we get all the time. So this entire book is from the hero's POV. And then we have our heroine, who, her name is Raine, who she was on this boat with, I believe, with some friends, because the boat, they do pleasure cruises, basically, and he's the captain. There's only 3 people on the crew, and he definitely stays out of the way of whoever his passengers are. He just wants their money, he takes them on their cruise, and then he doesn't have anything to do with them. Well, he wakes up in the middle of the night to himself drowning, basically, and he gets off. He's able to make it out of the boat, and he finds one of the life rafts, and he can't see anyone anywhere except for Raine. He ends up rescuing Raine, and she is on the life raft with him. And this book was so fascinating because he's very aggressive and he's very angry, and he soon is going through withdrawal from alcoholism, and he's very intense and mean. Like, but he almost can't help himself. So it's very strange because they are trapped together on this tiny raft for a good portion of this book. This isn't only them on the raft, but a good portion of it is. And we watch kind of this whole process of him going through these different stages of like, why did I save this person? She doesn't mean anything to me. I could have, I could live longer if she wasn't here. Well, at least that's what he thinks in the beginning, right? She's a burden to me. Why did I do this? Women only hurt me. Like, there's just so many things that go through his head. And I have to say, he is difficult to handle. And there was parts of this book where I was like, what an asshole. Like, this girl didn't ask for this. But when that starts to turn in his head, and because we're in his head, we get to see, and I think that's what's fascinating, because even if we had split POV, and we had to see what Raine was thinking, we might be kind of like, why is this girl like okay with how this guy treats her? But there's a part of the thing of like, it's forced proximity, the most forced proximity that it can be, with no one else to rely on survival or anything, So I ended up giving this book 5 stars when I was done with it because I had a very emotional feeling about it. I will say it ends pretty abruptly. The first one ends pretty quickly. It's still an HEA. There is a second one to this book, which I'm actually reading, but then I paused it because I don't know if I need to know the second half of this. I really enjoyed the survival part of it. I don't know if I need the second half, which is about their stuff afterwards. But I did give this one 5 stars. Then I read The Wedding Dilemma by Mariah Ankenman, I think is how you say it. I've been following Mariah on TikTok for a year, so I was aware of this book coming out and what it's about. And I kind of always meant to read it, and then it just didn't happen. And then I won a giveaway. I actually won an audio code for the audiobook. And the audiobook is, I think Connor Brown is the narrator of this. It's all one narrator. And it was just really fun. It was very low angst, but it has a very interesting setup. So our hero is a firefighter, and he gets called to a call where this woman, she is an artist on a part-time artist. Well, a full-time artist and a part-time. She does whatever she has to do to fund her art. And she is trying to do this art project that involves a plaster cast of herself, but she messed up and didn't put a layer in between her skin and the plaster. So very quickly it starts hardening. And so she calls 911, and then our firefighter and his men come, and they have to basically cut her out of this. And because she's mostly naked underneath, gets a good view at the girls, gets a good view of the goods, and it's horribly embarrassing, and she doesn't want to see him again. And then a couple weeks later, his mother and her father are actually engaged. And they didn't know about each other because they're the adult children of these single parents. And they end up meeting at the party. And she's like, oh my God, this hot firefighter is going to be my stepbrother. So it's technically a like future stepbrother book, but like they're both in their 20s and their parents, you know, there's not even the slightest taboo about this, but it's supposed to make it a forbidden thing. And I would say that like nobody believes this is a forbidden thing. Okay. Like besides of like, if it didn't work out, we'd maybe have to see each other, but also you don't, because again, they're adults. You wouldn't have to. But they get asked by their parents to plan a engagement party for them. And so they end up deciding that let's just fuck it out. Like, let's just have a night together and do it. And they do some fun, sexy stuff together. So I gave this 4 stars. It was sweet. It was fun. I had a good time. Then I read Unbound by McKenna. This was a recommendation from my friend Serafina on Instagram. She was reading this book and immediately wanted to get my hands on it. There's a lot of things to love about this book, so let me go through it. Our heroine has just lost her mom, and then she went on a health journey where she's actually lost 100 pounds. She has loose skin, liking what I'm hearing. And she's really kind of changed her health around, and she decides to go on kind of this memorial hike for her mom, because her mom is actually Scottish, but she's lived in America her whole life. So she decides to go on a hike between, like, I think it's between Edinburgh and Inverness. I know it's going to take her like 3 weeks. It's a long one. And she has really like, this is kind of a challenge for her new body, right? That she's got healthy enough that she's going to make this hike kind of in memory of her mom. And 2/3 of the way through her hike, she gets sick. And she ends up at the doorstep of this hermit who lives in the woods. And of course, because it's a romance, he's a sexy hermit. And he definitely has his reasons for living off of the map. And he is kind of terrified of her, that she's going to come in and like ruin his peace. And we find out some reasons why he's isolated himself. And one of them is that he has a very strong need for a certain kink involving rope or restraint. And so he is a submissive hero. And the way this all plays out is like very interesting, and how it all lays out. I enjoyed it. I really struggle with the rating. I think I ended up giving this 4.5 stars because it was so emotional, but also it was kinky in a way you don't see enough. And their communication through the kinky stuff was so amazing, because the heroine is just like, she's not in and of herself like a dom, but she's willing to try and do things that help our hero have satisfaction. And so it's a very interesting set too, because she's never like, I'm the boss, I'm a dom. She's more like, oh, you need me to kind of order you around a little bit. Like, I get off on what gets you off, so let's do this. So it's pretty hot. And a lot of the book is about him coming to terms with that. He's not a bad person because he wants some bondage, and that's not wrong for him to ask for that in a relationship. Who is willing to give him that. So it was pretty good. My biggest gripe, and the reason why it's not a 5-star, like I just couldn't do it, is that it ends very abruptly. After there is like, you know, 3rd act drama and what's going on, and then we're working through it, and it just ends like almost mid like makeup. It just ends and there's no epilogue. And I was like, what are you doing, lady? We need to round this out. So that's the thing for me, is I really need, and I've shared this, like a lot of people, once they know that people are happy, they're like, okay, I'm good. I need a minute to breathe. I need a minute to see how it worked out, what we're like 2 months, 6 months, 5 years later. I need that for me. So then I DNF'd a book. I DNF'd This Day by Blanka Lipinski. Yes, this is the follow-up to 365 Days. And I don't know why I requested this. It got sent to me in my email where it's like, request this on NetGalley. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. Even though I DNF'd 365 Days, the book, I made it halfway through this day. And then I came to this point where I was like, you know, I was already pretty slumpy this week. And I was like, why are we trying to get through this book? There's no value in this book for me. I don't want to blame it all on the translation, because obviously I don't read Polish and I don't know how to compare the two, and I also understand the point of like the translator who's doing that. They may have wanted to improve things, but that's not their job. Their job is to, and there's just some very bad choices made by the author in my point. Like within one paragraph, Massimo will be called Massimo, and it'll say Massimo threw me down on the bed, and then it'll say, and then the man in black climbed between my legs. So literally alternating sentences will call Massimo Massimo and the man in black, and it'll go back and forth, and every time he's addressed, he's called a name. Like it never just says like he. It always has to be the man in black or Massimo. And Laura is her Laura self, and I just don't know. I don't know. And I know I'm not the only one, because the ratings for this are not great. This comes out in December, and I just had to DNF for my mental health there. And I was like, all right, I learned my lesson. I won't try to read the next one. I will still watch the next film if Netflix ever puts it out, because I'm able to suspend my disbelief in a film a little easier than I am in a book when it comes to like dialogue-wise. But yeah, that was an adventure. So, yep. Then I did my reread of The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne. We talked about this for Rake Appreciation Society Book Club, which is over on Crystal's channel. It was our 1-year anniversary of our historical book club, and so Kerrigan Byrne actually joined us. So we didn't do too much breakdown of this book specifically. We mostly were asking her questions and learning about her process, and it was an absolute joy. She is so gracious and willing to kind of open herself up to us, and it was wonderful. So you can go and watch that on Crystal's channel. I'll try to remember to link it. If not, go to Crystal's Bookish Life. It's one of the most recent videos on there. This, in case you haven't read it, this is the first book in the Victorian Rebels, and actually one of my favorite historical romances of all time. It's between this and The Hunter, which is the second book in the series. This is about Dorian Blackwell, who is the like leader of the underworld in London. And then we have Farah Mackenzie, who is a widow who works for the police department. And Dorian says that he knows a man from her past, actually the man that she considers the husband of her heart, even though they were only handfast when they were children. Dorian was thrown into prison for something that he did to protect Farah. And Dorian and Dugan, Dugan was the boy that she loved. Dugan and Dorian were friends in prison, and they had this group of boys together that protected each other and got revenge against people who had raped and assaulted them while they were in prison. It's horrible. It's bad. But he finds out a secret about Farah, and he knows that he tells her that Dugan made him promise to look out for her. And so he thinks the only way to do that is by marrying her. And she doesn't know how she feels about that. The sexual chemistry in this is amazing. Dorian has a lot of hang-ups. He has a lot of issues, and they are all beautifully on display in this book. This is obviously a 5-star book. If I'd been doing 6-star books when this one came out, this would be it. Then I read a couple of quickies just to keep me moving, because like I said, I was in a slump here, and I read Sidebarred by Emma Chase. I was able to get the audio for this one on Scribd, and this was only like a 2-hour audiobook, so it only took me like an hour and a half. This basically follows up with Jake and Chelsea, which were my favorite couple from the series. So technically this book is 3.5 because it takes place after the third one. But if you just read Sustained, you can read Sidebarred. So this takes place 2 years later. It's their life with their big brood of kiddos, and it's absolutely beautiful. Jake and Chelsea just have my heart so much. I'm so glad I read Sustained. And Sidebarred was this beautiful little epilogue, kind of catching up with all of our characters, but mostly Jake and Chelsea and their brood of kiddos. So loved it. 5 stars, no doubt. Then I read The King and Jai by Isla Olson. This was recommended to me by Charles from Books on Stereo, and he said that I would love these. This is a gay retelling of The King and I, basically. One of our heroes, Jai, he is from America. He knows a lot of languages. He's learned a lot of them, and he gets a job as a tutor for this made-up royal family, which is a widowed king and his 2 children. And it turns out that our king is actually a repressed gay man, and his wife even knew that. She actually was asexual, so they had both of their kids through infertilization, which is kind of cool. But it's a secret that he's had to keep his whole life because his father, the previous king, basically threatened their line of succession if it ever got out that he liked men instead. But his father's dead, and he is super attracted to the new tutor for his children. This is also an age gap because I believe the tutor is like 25 and he is, in his late 30s, 40s, I'm not sure. And this was delightful. I mean, it was only like 180 pages. It was this felt like a full story though, because it doesn't have a ton of the added drama. Obviously there's angst in the beginning because the king is like, I can't let anyone know, but it's pretty delightful. Loved it. Then I read Three's a Crown, which is the next book in the series and is actually a triple M menage. So it's a gay menage, and it's between the king's younger brother and 2 bodyguards. So actually the king's brother and the king's bodyguard, they had already been together a few years in the past, and then the prince wanted more and the bodyguard was not out yet. So he was like, I don't know how this would work, and I don't know if I can be what you want. And so they broke up, and the prince went on to be a playboy because he was like, well, I can't have the one I love, so I'm just gonna have everybody. But he's tired of it, and he wants his man back. So he moves back home to the palace, and he's gonna go for it. Now in the meantime, the palace has a part-time guard who comes in who owes them a favor. Sorry, I forgot everyone's names. That's why I'm saying this person, but he's from America and he's there to be a temporary guard because he owes someone a favor. So he's there to help out, and he's super attracted to the older guard as well. And so the prince and him are kind of competing for his attention, and they end up having a lot of angry blowjobs between each other, which the older guard catches them at one time. So you could say that this is it's just not really cheating because neither of them are with him. Neither of them are with him yet. They're trying to be. So you could say not the smartest plan to be fucking each other if you're trying to get the other guy, but lucky for them, he walks in on them one time and he's like, I like this, and how about we're all together? So this was fun. The prince, he's a bit of a brat, and the one guard is a bit of a dominant, so he kind of is. So it's not fully fleshed dynamic, but it is. And my biggest issue with this one is that there was a lot of one-on-one stuff, and there was only 1.5 scenes of everybody together. And I'm if you're gonna call the book Three is a Crown and you're giving me a male menage, I need a little bit more than this. I'm just saying. So that was a bit of a letdown. So this one was 4 stars, but it was still super delightful, and you might not have a problem with that the way that I did. Then I read Spiral of Need by Suzanne Wright. I decided I wanted to start the Mercury pack because I read earlier this year, I read all of the Phoenix pack, and the Mercury pack is basically just a continuation because we've already had some wolves from the Mercury pack, like with people from the Phoenix pack, and now we get to try to match up the Mercury pack with people. They are like a smaller pack that is actually still a little bit like vulnerable because they're kind of a mismatch of wolves. And this one is actually, we have our heroine who the male that she was going to imprint with, he found his true mate, and that kind of kicks the other person out, basically. And his new mate has really been making things like hell for her. So she gets asked to like leave, which is just a horrible thing. Like, it's horrible. But her like older like foster brother, who's actually in prison right now, he was kind of a bad guy in other series, but he's very protective of his younger sister type character. And so he asks the Mercury pack if they will take her in until he gets out of prison, because he's going to be out of prison soon, and just watch out for her. And they owe him a favor, so they do it, and she finds her true mate at this pack. So I've really liked the books I've read by Suzanne Wright. And my biggest gripe is the female hate that is in this series. And it was at an all-time high in this book because, again, and I'm sorry this is kind of a spoiler, but also it's not, because most of the books are this. The villain of this book is an ex, like, is the new like female mate of her, who she was going to imprint with, but she's not with him anymore. And that woman is literally trying to kill her to keep them apart when, like, they're not together. Like, they're not together. And that happens in so many of the books. Like, in 5 out of the 9 books I've read by her now, it's either an ex-boyfriend, an ex-girlfriend, someone who thinks that they're really their mate, or, like, just someone who's jealous. So it's always like an ex or an other woman or man. It isn't just them, but I mean, like, who's the problem. And I just think there are other things that we could be doing with these awesome fated mates. Like, I love how the fated mate like works with them, and how it just like builds and builds and builds, and like the wolves recognize each other always, but it's the people that get in the way. Like, there's so much about it I love, but we fall back to like the scorned woman trope. And I'm sorry, Suzanne Wright, you've done it just one too many times, and I want to keep reading these, but I can't have that keep being the thing. So this one was only a 3.5 star for me. I still recommend you read the first couple books. Like, I love Feral Needs. I just forgot it. I have it back there. Like, I love the first couple books of hers that I read, and I still want to own them and have them. Like, I love Feral Sins. That's what it's called. But I don't want to like continue because the story just keeps getting reused. But I do want to try some of her contemporary books. I've had some of them recommended to me, but I don't know that I can read many more of her paranormal because they're all the same. All right, then I read Ignite by Melanie Harlow. I got to read an arc of this. This book comes out on the 18th, maybe. I was very excited that Melanie was going back to Cloverleaf Farms. She hadn't really went that far away from Cloverleaf Farms anyway, but she went back again with kind of the second generation. So this book is about Winnie, who is the youngest daughter of Mac, who, like, Mac and Franny were irresistible, which is book 1. And I mean, they had some kids together too, but Winnie was the youngest daughter, like, that was Mac's before he married her. She was only like 3 or 4 when Franny was their nanny. And it's between her and Dexter, who is now her next door neighbor. And Dexter is actually like connected through, like, he's best friends with Chip, who is the son of April and Travis, who are in the last book. So like that's how they know each other. But he's a lot older than Winnie. Well, not a lot. He's 34 and she's 22, and they end up being neighbors. And he is a firefighter, Navy SEAL, divorced, has 2 daughters, and he's very grumpy, very sexy, very grumpy. And Winnie, she's kind of had a run of falling in love too quickly with men, and so she's decided she's gonna take a break from falling in love with people all the time. I understand. But then Dex moves in next door, and he keeps seeing her in compromising positions. Her fire alarm goes off one day, and he like runs in to see if she's okay, and she's like naked trying to get the fire alarm to go off. So he sees her, and his daughters absolutely love her, and yeah, it was super cute. Pretty much everything about this was predictable, but I didn't care because it was adorable, and it was super hot. Like, Melanie Harlow writes good smutty times. She really does. It was good. I do feel like the third act conflict lasted too long, and the biggest thing, which I am giving this book 4.5 stars because it was nostalgia for me in a big part. But there's lots of jokes about how Winnie's relationship with Dex is a lot like Franny's was with Mac. And it's fine for you to point that out, but like, then the parallels are so much. Like, it'd be fine if you commented on it, but it's kind of like you're commenting on something that's just blaring in our face. Like, it was too much like Irresistible, okay? It was too much like it. But lucky for this book, I really love Irresistible, and I do think that I love a grumpy hero who is just super dirty in the bedroom, and so that works. But I'm really not a fan of guys who are just like, I'm not good enough for you, so I'm gonna break your heart. I'm not a big fan of that. But I gave it 4.5 stars because reasons. All right, and then the last one I want to mention just real quick is I finished the McCabe trilogy, and I read Never Love a Highlander. This is about Kaylin and Riona. Poor Riona has kept getting moved off because she was supposed to marry all 3 of the McCabe brothers at one time, and finally she's married to Kaylin. So I like this because the wedding is literally like has happened. They are married at the beginning of this, and Kaylin is going to be the new laird of the McDonald clan, who McDonald is still alive. He is, you know, Riona's dad, and he is a coward and kind of a traitor, and he's going to be the laird as kind of like a punishment to McDonald. But Kaylin kind of goes into this as like he needs to whip them all into shape because they're going to be going to war against another clan, and these people are not prepared because their laird has not prepared them. And he kind of goes in very cocky and like he knows best, and he's going to whip these people into shape. And he's just all around, he's a dick. And he quickly becomes infatuated with Riona because she's beautiful and fierce, and she's this warrior princess. But he does everything that he can to suffocate that. And I know that that's the point of the book. But it was very frustrating for a big part of this book. And then they would have sex, and it was super steamy sex because Maya Banks writes really good sex. But then he would be just hurtful to her in what he said. And that just didn't work for me. There was a good turn at the end, though. I feel that it's not so much a grovel, but the thing that he does to prove that he's all in and that he wants to not punish these people, he wants to be their laird, it was really beautiful. So that won me over a little bit, but I still gave this one 4 stars. I still, like, Never Seduce a Scot is still the best. It's fantastic. It's 6 stars. It's one of my rereads I'm going to do this year. But these were not bad. They were great. And I do wish that Maya Banks had more historicals. So there we go. Told you that'd be a short one. Those are all the books that I read this week. Hopefully we'll have some more for you next week. But there will be a little bit of scarcity going into Thanksgiving just because there will be babies to cuddle and big B's books to read. So there we go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when I upload. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.